France, December 1944. The fields around Street Low were mud, ankle-deep, oil-streaked, littered with the carcasses of machines. American ground crews called them Thunderbolts with pneumonia. The P-47 seconds, hulking and powerful, refused to climb in the damp air. Engines sputtered, spark plugs fouled, and pilots cursed the plane that was supposed to own the sky. At dawn, a low mist clung to the runway. Sergeant Ed Shortfuse Daniels crouched under the cowling of a dead P-47, his coveralls soaked with oil, toolbox half buried in muck. He'd already swapped plugs, cleaned filters, and cursed the Republic Aviation factory back in New York for building an aircraft that hated European weather. This wasn't new. For weeks, the 362nd Fighter Group had been grounded in cycles, planes up for a sortie, then back for maintenance. The cold moisture and leaded fuel fouled plugs faster than they could be replaced. Engines that ran perfectly in Arizona choked in France's winter humidity. Daniels wasn't an engineer. He was a mechanic who believed if something wasn't working, manuals were the last thing to trust. Behind him, a test pilot shouted, "Another one dead." Daniels wiped his hands. Same story. Sparks dead at altitude. I'm about ready to light a match myself. He glanced at the maintenance truck nearby, stacked with crates marked B-24 spares, R-1000, 830 plugs. The bomber plugs were technically incompatible, different heat range, different clearance. Using them violated at least 3 maintenance directives, but they burned hotter, ran cleaner, and didn't foul under moisture. Daniels stared at them, then muttered, "To hell with theory." He pulled 36 plugs from the Thunderbolt's twin-bank radio and replaced them one by one. He didn't tell the crew chief. He didn't tell anyone. When the pilot returned, Daniels just said, "Try her again, and don't baby it." The Thunderbolt rolled down the strip, tail heavy with mud. At first, nothing unusual, the same low growl of a tired engine. Then, halfway down the runway, it came alive. The roar deepened, the propeller blur sharpened, and the plane leapt into the sky like it had shed a ton of weight. Daniels listened. He could tell by the sound. Smoother combustion, cleaner ignition. "Tower, this is Red 2, came the pilot's voice. Climbing through 10,000, throttled steady. "What the hell did you do to this thing?" Daniels grinned. "Just swapped her spark." By 12,000 feet, the pilot was laughing. "Feels like a new bird. I'm climbing faster than I ever have." Daniels said nothing. The numbers would speak soon enough. That afternoon, test data came in. Climb rate up 20%, cylinder temperature down 25 degrees, plug fouling reduced to 0. The cleanest engine run since the squadron landed in France. The crew chief called it luck. The maintenance officer called it stupidity. Daniels called it proof. Word spread fast. Some grease monkey had made a Thunderbolt outclimb a Spitfire. Pilots started asking for Daniels' plugs. Supply officers checked part numbers. Headquarters started asking questions. By morning, Daniels was summoned to the operations tent. 2 officers waited. "Sergeant," one said, "you swapped non-standard parts from bomber inventory into fighter engines. That's unauthorized modification." Daniels shrugged. "Sir, it worked." The officer's jaw tightened. "You could have caused catastrophic detonation," Daniels muttered, "or climbed faster." The reprimand came down that afternoon. Officially, he'd violated Section 9 of Maintenance Protocol. Unofficially, every pilot wanted him working on their aircraft. What started as a stupid field swap was about to rewrite the high-altitude balance of the air war, one spark plug at a time. Because sometimes innovation doesn't come from laboratories or factories, it comes from mud, grease, and a man too stubborn to stop thinking. The P-47 Thunderbolt was a paradox on wings. The heaviest single-engine fighter of World War II, an armoured brute with the heart of a bomber. Pilots called it the Jug, short for juggernaut, but also for how it handled. Solid, sluggish, slow to climb. To many, it wasn't a fighter. It was a flying anvil with guns. By 1943, the legend of the Thunderbolt split in two. To the American public, it was indestructible, bringing pilots home with half a wing gone. But to the 8th and 9th Air Forces, it was a lumbering giant unable to chase a Messerschmitt above 20,000 feet. The myth stuck. On paper, the P-47's Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine produced over 2,000 horsepower, boosted by a turbo supercharger. In theory, it could climb faster than a Spitfire MC-9 or a Bf-109G, but theory didn't account for Europe's weather or the ignition flaw. In Arizona, spark plugs ran clean and hot. In France and Belgium, constant mist and lead-rich 100-octane fuel fouled them fast. Moisture and carbon deposits shorted electrodes, causing misfires and power loss. At 15,000 feet, a single cylinder running cold could rob the engine of efficiency. Multiply by 36 cylinders, and the flying brick reputation became inevitable. Pilots didn't know why, they only felt it. Engines sputtered, stuttered, lost power climbing through clouds. Mechanics followed manuals, replacing plugs every 25 hours. It didn't fix the problem, it just postponed it. The Thunderbolt's engine wasn't weak, it was choking on its own maintenance protocol. Meanwhile, Luftwaffe propaganda loved the myth. German pilots bragged that the P-47 couldn't catch them in a climb. Daniels didn't know the theory, but his gut told him the system needed heat, not more replacements. The Army Air Force's technical staff had noted recurrent plug fouling in Europe. Their response: increase cleaning intervals. The underlying flaw went unaddressed. Pilots adapted tactics. Dive instead of climb, relying on the Thunderbolt's mass and momentum to win. Boom and zoom. It worked, but reinforced the myth. Too heavy to fight vertically. What nobody realized, the limitation wasn't aerodynamic, it was electrical. A 25-cent spark plug was robbing a $100,000 fighter of its potential. Daniels' experiment didn't just make one plane climb better, it exposed a blind spot. Maintenance could innovate, not just obey. The manual said change was dangerous, the battlefield would prove otherwise. Once that Thunderbolt climbed like a rocket, no one could unsee it. The myth was about to burn away, one ignition spark at a time. By late 1944, the war machine roared at full speed. Even the best weapons broke in mud. P-47 seconds born in pristine factories were now fighting from cow pastures in Normandy and Belgium. 9th Air Force forward bases were chaos. Ground soft, fuel dirty, everything rusted. Engines froze at night, turned to syrup by noon. Every pilot knew the drill. Fly hard, return coughing smoke, hand the problem to the crew chief. Daniels thrived inside the chaos. He was 26, wiry, always covered in oil. A former factory worker in Peoria, he'd built farm machinery to endure rain, dust, neglect. He joined the Army Air Forces to fix engines. Instead, he fixed bureaucracy's consequences. Daniels had a motto: if it breaks the same way twice, the manual's wrong. Manuals ruled the war. Every bolt, every plug, every part had a number. Woe to the mechanic who mixed them. The Thunderbolt's R2800 engines were masterpieces, built with precision and maintained by the book. Yet they died faster than replacements arrived from England. By December, Street Low had become a graveyard of Thunderbolts with dead plugs. Humidity and rich 130-octane fuel fouled ignition faster than service could respond. Official fix: clean and rotate plugs after every mission. A 4-hour process per plane. Daniels ran the numbers. 18 aircraft per squadron, 36 plugs each, fouled every 25 flight hours. Over 600 plugs replaced per week, only 400 spares in supply. Math didn't work. He walked through maintenance tents, frustration everywhere, half-cleaned plugs soaking in benzene, waiting to be reinstalled. He asked a crew chief the real problem. The man spat into the mud. They're too cold for this climate. That night, Daniels studied manuals under a lantern. Compared part numbers. R2800 in fighters versus R-1830 in B-24 bombers. Difference: heat range. Bomber plugs burned 80 degrees hotter. Hotter meant fewer fouling deposits, self-cleaning in moisture, at risk of pre-ignition. Gamble. He wrote, "Could B-24 plugs work? Same pitch, same gap, hotter burn? Dangerous? Maybe. Worth trying? Definitely." Next morning, Supply Sergeant pointed to a crate labelled R-1830 spark assemblies. Daniels ran his fingertip along the threads. If the parts fit, engine would fire. If it fired cleaner, manuals were lying. The American war machine produced over 15,000 P-47 seconds in 1944, identical, standardized, safe, but perfection on paper didn't survive mud-filled airfields, low-octane substitutes, mechanics improvising under artillery fire. Pilots didn't know, they just wanted to climb faster. Daniels didn't care about doctrine, he cared about sound. The P-47's R-2800 didn't sing, it coughed. That sound drove him to break a rule no one dared touch. If the system wouldn't adapt, someone in the mud would. Manuals controlled chaos. Real engineering happened on the ground, in frustration and intuition. War is numbers, planes, men, seconds between life and death. For the P-47, the numbers that mattered most were spark plugs. Each R-2800 had 18 cylinders, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, 36 per aircraft. Each expected 25 flight hours before fouling. Clean air in Arizona? Works. France? Fouling in 8 hours? Single squadron of 18 P-47 seconds. 800 plugs a week in heavy combat. Each cost $2.75. Small individually, ruinous in aggregate. Replacing and cleaning consumed 200 man-hours weekly. Logistics couldn't keep up. Misfire at altitude meant more fuel burned, higher chance of engine failure. A fouled plug caused imbalance. Rough running, hotter engine, faster plug burn, a circle of inefficiency. Daniels' insight mattered. Cold plugs optimized for high-altitude American conditions. European winter dense, humid, cold plugs couldn't burn off deposits. Hotter B-24R 1830 plugs operated 70-90 degrees hotter at the tip, vaporizing oil and lead residue, preventing fouling. A small difference, altered combustion timing. Single cylinder, fraction of a horsepower. 36 cylinders, nearly 8% efficiency increase. Turbo supercharger above 20,000 feet. Stable ignition with hotter plugs. Daniels' test plane climbed 3,500 feet per minute versus squadron average, 2,825% improvement without touching airframe, fuel or supercharger. Miracle to pilots, math to Daniels. Engine power rose linearly with cylinder efficiency. Plug fouling near zero, fuel burn down 3%, cylinder head, temperature dropped 25 degrees, vibration harmonics changed, aircraft ran smoother. Officially, standard issue R-2800 cleaned and replaced. Bureaucracy refused to acknowledge field modifications. Daniels' fix spread laterally, quietly, by rumour. Pilots requested him personally. Crews traded B-24 plugs like contraband. The black market of performance had begun. Morning after, Daniels stood by his Thunderbolt, wiping hands with an oil rag, pretending another maintenance day. Test pilot Lieutenant Jack Morrison, veteran of 50 missions, climbed in. Daniels didn't tell him about the plug swap. Starter whirred, radial coughed, then caught. Rumble filled the field different, cleaner, sharper. Morrison taxied forward, throttled up. Mud whipped Daniels' face. He listened. Sound was data, now music. P-47 lifted off at 140 miles per hour, began climb. No sputter. Red 2 to ground, passing 10,000, still climbing smooth. "What did you do?" Daniels smirked. "Just replaced a few plugs." "With what?" Morrison asked. "B-24 stock." Daniels nodded. "Runs hotter. Thought it might burn fouling." Pilot laughed. Insane, but it works. Crew chief reported him to maintenance officer. Daniels faced Captain Reynolds with grease on hands. Reynolds held fouled plug and new bomber plug. Explain why you turned my maintenance line into an experiment. Daniels calmly. We lost 6 planes this month to fouled ignition. I found a fix. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. Unauthorized. Could detonate. Could kill a pilot. Daniels didn't back down. Reynolds studied the report. Climb rate up. Engine consistent. No fouling. Silence. Finally, formal reprimand. But you'll tune every bird on this field before dawn. That night, Daniels and crew swapped bomber plugs into every P-47. By sunrise, 12 Thunderbolts prepped. Next mission, bomber escort to the Ardennes. Difference immediate. Pilots climbed higher, faster, intercepting threats previously out of reach. Mission. Logs called it favorable conditions. Crews knew truth. It wasn't weather. It was the spark. Daniels' field innovation spread to neighboring units. Some saw genius, some a loose cannon. Bureaucracy would punish him for a change soon, quietly noted in factory reports. 3 consecutive test flights. Modified P-47 seconds reached 20,000 feet in 5.8 minutes versus 7.4 for standard models. Cylinder head temperatures dropped from 420 degrees to 395 degrees F. Spark plug fouling, none. Throttle response, instant. Daniels' numbers defended him, capped. Reynolds filed unauthorized component substitution. Dry, factual, damning final line. Operational performance improved. Contradiction reached headquarters in 48 hours. Colonel, cease modification pending evaluation. Pilots already demanded it. Old plugs fouled mid-mission, new ones didn't. 362nd escorted B-26 bombers over Germany without a single engine failure. Skeptics took notice. Bureaucracy required months for formal engineering review. Time. At front. None. Reynolds confronted Daniels. Command says stop. Pilots say don't. Daniels. Sleeves rolled up, wrench in hand. Silence. Reynolds. Keep doing it, just don't write it down. By January 1945, field performance data, 35% fewer aborted missions, 20% faster climb to altitude. Reports labelled anomalous. Daniels didn't care. He watched planes leave, engines howling clean, smoke trails sharp against the sky. Numbers had won. High command saw danger. Single sergeant bypassed system designed to prevent improvisation. Investigation sent officers from England. Conclusion shocked everyone. No adverse effects, measurable performance enhancement. Further study recommended. Military code, quiet approval. Within weeks, Wright Field requested samples. Dyno tests confirmed Daniels' observation. Hotter plugs, improved detonation in humid low-temperature conditions. Spring. Official change authorized under Ignition Optimization European Theatre Variant Number 19. Daniels' name absent, mechanics knew. Daniels' ignition. Factories shipped P-47 seconds with modified plugs. Pilots climbed through clouds without choking. Luftwaffe records early 1,945. 30% decline in interception success above 18,000 feet. Daniels. Surreal. Change that almost earned court-martial became standard. Visiting General toured airfield April 1945, shook hands with crews, reached Daniels. Man behind plug fix? Daniels shrugged. Got tired of replacing them. General grinned. Best engineers don't always have degrees. Daniels watched engines roar, smooth, rich, alive, proof of one man turning frustration into altitude. By summer, war ending, modified P-47 seconds logged tens of thousands of flight hours without plug-related failure. Daniels' field trick quietly improved one of the war's most produced fighters. When asked how he figured it out, engines talk. You just have to listen past the manuals. Legacy wasn't in headlines. It was every clean ignition, climbing faster than enemy expected. Spring, 1945. Story of Ed Shortfuse Daniels became legend among mechanics. P-47 reputation transformed. Flying brick, now fastest climbing, reliable fighter above 20,000 feet. Phrase became squadron slang. Give it a spark and let it sing. Small acts of disobedience multiplied into systemic advantage. One man's refusal to accept limits changed the war in the air.